Hey everyone, I'm Michael, and welcome to episode 1 of LittleBigGamedev, where I try to teach you actual real-life game design concepts using LittleBigPlanet. In this series, we're going to be building a LittleBigPlanet level from scratch using the traditional game development lifecycle. So we're going to be coming up with an idea, prototyping it, implementing it, testing it, and revising it, and then eventually we will be releasing it. So in this video, we're going to start out with, well, the idea. Because when we spawn into the level, well, we have nothing but a border and a checkpoint. And, you know, not a whole lot else. So, we're gonna be turning this into, well, a level that people will actually play and find interesting and, you know, that won't crash their console. So we're gonna hop out of create mode. By the end of this video, though I won't do it on camera, by the end of this video, our level will no longer be an empty level. It'll have a name, some sort of badge, it'll have our gameplay tags, and it'll have our description. Along with that, we'll decide whether or not the level is locked, copyable, or a sub-level. So let's get into it. I'm going to switch us over to Visual Studio Code, my favorite text editor, so that we can start coming up with an idea for our level. So, the idea here is that we need to come up with a name and a description. It's not going to be our final name, or maybe it could be, but it's got to be something. This is going to help us come up with our idea for the level. That's essentially what we're doing. We're going to describe our idea for the level we would like to create. In this case, I'm going to be building a complete redesign of a level that I did all the way back in the day known as Hazardland, and the level back then was in LittleBigPlanet 2, and it was not a great level. I wouldn't play it. But, I'm going to be completely redoing it in LittleBigPlanet 3 to take advantage of some of its, you know, new gameplay features. And I'm thinking that that level had to do with sackbots and getting them back to some sort of home area. So, sort of like the LittleBigPlanet 2 story, a large majority of that is rescuing sackbots. So, we're going to be focusing on that. I already have a name for a level, and I'm going to call it the Hazardland. And we already have our name in place. So what's our level going to be about? Well, I told you, it's going to have sackbots in it. We're going to be leading them to some sort of home area, and we know from the title that there's going to be some sort of hazard. Or hazards. So, I'm thinking, well, we're going to guide sackbots through hazards. To bring them home. So, let's write that down. In this level, Sackboy must guide a group of sackbots through... By the way, in Visual Studio Code, if you're using it and you'd like word wrap, you can type that in. And if you type it correctly, and I mean type it correctly, you will get word wrap. There we go. So, must guide a group of sackbots through many different hazards, including electricity, plasma, horrible gas, spikes, and more. Can he get them all to their home? I'm going to go ahead and replace he with Sackboy. So yeah, that is basically our description in a nutshell. What we're writing here is actually called a game design document. It's a document that basically outlines the entire design of the game. Basically an outline of the entire gameplay of the game, and even the world, and the way it looks, and the storyline, and all the characters and how they work. Now, there's another type of document that explains how these are all implemented, and that's called a technical design document. That's gonna go over essentially all of the pseudocode for everything. But since we're in LittleBigPlanet, we don't need to worry about programming. So we don't necessarily need a technical design document for that. And from here on out, because we're working on a level for LittleBigPlanet, I'm going to call this document a level design document instead of a game design document, but just know that they are the same thing. It's just that I'm calling them differently for the sake of my own sanity. So what else is our level going to have? Well, if we switch over back to LittleBigPlanet here, I'm going to do a quick save. We have many things that we need to fill out. We need a badge, which we can get later. We're going to need a title, which we have, the hazard link. And we're going to need a description that we have, which is what I wrote in the document. We also need some gameplay element tags. This is going to help the LittleBigPlanet search engine find our level a little more easily. And if you go in here, there's a lot of ideas for things that we can have in our level. And the idea is, instead of filling these out right away, because you have a limit, you're going to fill them out in the LDD, the level design document. So the first thing that I'd like to figure out is our level going to be short or long? Short would typically be no more than 2 or 3 screens worth of playable area. Long would be anything longer than that. And especially long levels would take advantage of the dynamic thermometer in LBP3. I'm thinking because we have multiple hazards, and we've got to guide sackbots through them and all that stuff, I'm going to go for a long level. So in here, I'm going to just use, well, long. And if I switch back to LBP here, you'll notice, well, there we go. We have our first tag. Now, do I want the level to be a difficult level, or a more easygoing level for everyone to play? Basically, what skill level of LittleBigPlanet users am I targeting here? Well, I mean, people have already played through a level like this, or a few levels like this in LPP2. So I want to give them a little more of a challenge than LittleBigPlanet 2, because if they wanted to rescue sackbots, they'd just play LittleBigPlanet 2. So, in this case, I'm going to go for a more challenging level. And if I switch back into LittleBigPlanet, there's already, right next to long, there's a challenging tag. Now, another thing that I'd want to know is if I'm going to allow multiplayer, or multiple users in the level. Is this going to be a single player or a multiplayer level? Well, I don't have multiple people to test the level with, so I'm not probably going to design it with multiplayer in mind. Keep in mind that you can say that a level is multiplayer, but if it's not designed to work well with multiple players, it's just not going to be fun for them. So, in this case, I'm going to have to limit myself to single player. So, players, single player. And if I go back into LBP here, you'll notice that there is, well, a single player tag. So I'm going to select that. Now, I already know that my primary focus on the level theme, is going to be hazards and sackbots. But we have a limit on how many tags we can use in the game. So we need to pick which one of these items is more important to the level. Is hazards more prominent, or is sackbots more prominent in the level? Well, we don't know yet, but I'm going to assume in my head that the more prominent thing is going to be the sackbots. More of the gameplay is going to be around getting the sackbots through the hazards rather than, getting through the hazards. And maybe I could have something where you win extra prizes depending on how many sackbots you're able to rescue. And that's something that we have in LittleBigPlanet 2. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go with sackbots being my primary focus. So if I switch back to LBP2 here, or LBP here, one of these types is going to involve sackbots. And I'm not sure which one. Oh, there it is. Okay, so sackbots. We have that in our list here. So far we have a long, challenging, single-player level containing sackbots. And that's what our tag describes. Or that's what our tags describe. So if I go back into my LBP2, or my text editor here, and get out of the level in LittleBigPlanet, the next thing that I need to decide is an actual setting for the level. Is it going to be at day or night? What theme is it going to be in? That's going to help me determine later on what music I'm going to use in the level, and what the background is going to be, and the different materials that I use as well as generally how I design the level later on as far as artistic materials go. So for example, in LittleBigPlanet 1 and 2, we have different curators, and they all have different level art styles. We have the gardens, we have the savannah, we have the metropolis, and they all take place in different backgrounds. They have different music, they have different materials that they use, different characters, all sorts of different stuff. And in LittleBigPlanet 2, we have the same thing. Da Vinci's Hideout, the Factory of a Better Tomorrow, we have Avalonia, all that stuff. I'm thinking that I want to go for an Avalonia type look, but I haven't actually completed Avalonia in LittleBigPlanet 2, so I don't know if I have that background yet. So I'm gonna check just to make sure that I do in fact have that background. So we go into global, and we go here, and it's the first one there. I have unlocked it. So I'm gonna go for an Avalonia theme. And this is basically going to be the basis for how I design the entire level, and holy crap, did Sackboy go crazy there. So, now, just a word of warning. With these LBP 1 and 2 themes, they aren't really great for 16-layer levels, so keep that in mind. But either way, we're gonna fly back here, and I'm gonna go back into Visual Studio, and I'm gonna go for the setting, Avalonia, and I'm thinking that I'm gonna leave it as daytime. Alright, so that gives me an idea of what my level is gonna be like artistically. It's gonna be very technological. The next thing that I want to decide in my level design document here is going to be the different sections of the level. So the different areas. And what I mean by that is if we go into LittleBigPlanet, again, whoops, it's Control-Shift-1. If I go into LBP, we have these things called checkpoints, if you haven't played the game before. If you have, then you know exactly where I'm going with this. But we have these different checkpoints in the level. And the way I like to think about it is the distance between one checkpoint, for example, the start gate here, and another checkpoint is going to be a level scene. And generally, you will have 1 to 2 gameplay elements between 2 of these checkpoints, ideally. That keeps things nice and balanced. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with the different scenes in our level. Alright, so Control-Shift-2, and then we're going to come up with a list of scenes. So, we're going to have an intro scene. That's going to be where our start gate is, and there's going to be really no gameplay elements here. There might be a character with a magic mouth applied to it, telling us about the level. Which is a good thing to write down. And then we're probably going to have the sackbots spawn into the level at this point. However, in thinking about that, I realized that sackbots are not a very great thing to have loaded in the level at all times, because of the thermometer. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe we're gonna have to pick up more sackbots along the way. Um, so I'm gonna revise this and say first sackbots spawn in the level. And maybe there will be a puzzle there to get the sackbots out. Alright, so that's how that works. So that's gonna be our little intro / prologue section. And then maybe our next section is going to be a very electricity-based section. Which I'm gonna call Electric Boogaloo as a reference to my friend Trey. So this section is probably gonna be based around electricity hazards. And making sure that the sackbots don't get hit. So we could have things like, arc discharging hazards, electric floors, and do some maybe some Victoria creator area things, like how when an electric circuit fires up and hits a platform, that platform might launch you or squish you or something like that. So maybe we'll have that in our little electricity scene. Now, these could be split into multiple scenes, keep that in mind. This is going to be a long level, so we're going to have to, design that with this in mind. So there might be multiple checkpoints within the same hazard area, but that's okay. We're coming up with ideas. Maybe the next thing that we'll have is some sort of spike hazard that the sackbots have to either help the player get over the spikes, kind of like we see in the Factory of the Better Tomorrow, or maybe the player has to help the sackbots, something like that. So, spike field is gonna be what I call it. Spikes area. And then I'm thinking, yeah, we're gonna have sackbots, sackbots help the player swing across gaps. Player has to close these gaps for the sackbots. Alright, so that's gonna be our spike scene. And then maybe we're gonna have a fire scene. No, we're not. We're not gonna have a fire scene just yet. We're going to have a horrible gas scene. Which I'm gonna call Who Farted. Player must... So I'm thinking in my head right now, we're gonna have, like, a very, very sick-feeling toggle somewhere in the level. Who is the character in LittleBigPlanet 3, by the way. We're probably gonna have a very stomach-sick toggle in the level that's, like, farting things at the player, and it's just not a great experience. Maybe he ate a little too much Taco Bell or Tim Hortons. Player must dodge the sick toggles, farts, and probably other, hazards. And then maybe the sackbots have to get past Toggle, because, they don't want to smell him. He's sick. So we somehow have to convince Toggle to get out of the way. Player must convince Toggle to go to the bathroom to let the sackbots through. Oh my god, I'm probably gonna get grief reported for that, but it's creative, okay? Anyway, the next thing that we're gonna have is maybe Toggle went to the washroom, and, you know, he clogged the toilet. So now, the building that we're in is experiencing a flood full of horrible gas and water. And sackbots don't like water, they can't swim. So, plumbing emergency. Flood scene. Toggle clogged the toilet. Avalonia is now flooding. Player must stop the flooding so the sackbots can evacuate. And maybe by the end of it, we're gonna have some fire. Fire escape. Fire scene. Now the building's on fire. Because of the flooding causing electric shorts. Water and fire damage is causing the building to structurally disintegrate. Sackboy must lead sackbots through and evacuate the premises. Level complete. So that is our entire level basically documented. So this is how our level is going to work. We're going to start out with an intro scene where we pick up some sackbots, and then we're going to have some sort of electric type areas in the level that we have to get through. And then we're going to have the spike areas, and then we're going to come upon a very, very, very poor, sick Toggle who ate too much. And we need to help him get into the bathroom. And then when he finally does, he floods the place because he clogged the toilet. And the flooding has caused some electric short circuits in the building, and now that's caused a fire, and now we have a big problem. And then we have to get through that big problem as our sort of final platforming scene, and then our level is complete. So that's our level. And already we know what our characters are going to be, so we're going to get through that. So we know that our characters are going to involve Sackboy, the player. Avalon, who is going to be passive. Toggle, hostile. Sackbots, passive. And maybe we're gonna have a... Maybe we're gonna have Clive in the level, trying to get his sackbots back. So yeah, that's all our characters. And they're already pre-made characters in LVP, so we're good on that front. Anyway. So we have basically written out an entire LittleBigPlanet level. This is basically all we need to know as far as planning. So, yeah, that is a level design document, in a nutshell, basically. So, in the next video, I'm gonna go through and we're gonna start prototyping our different scenes, laying out the checkpoints, and And, you know, we won't be picking materials and we won't be making things look good. But what we will be doing is we're going to be making the structural areas of the level so that we can walk through, and eventually we can fill those areas in with hazards and characters and points and all that stuff. But anyway, this is the end of Little Big Game Dev episode 1. As always, hope you guys have learned something. I hope I have sparked your creativity by giving you this little tip for coming up with level ideas. And anyway, I've been Michael. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.